Hello, everyone. I think you're all on now. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Miriam Kühne. I'm a German by origin, and I live in Amsterdam. In my day job, I work for the RIPE NCC in Amsterdam, the IP registry. And in terms of the IETF, I've been attending the IETF for many, many years, and I'm the co-chair of the education team that's responsible for this tutorial, a number of other tutorials and other training activities during the IETF. And I will walk you through most of these slides with help of some of my other team colleagues. And maybe you want to introduce yourselves also, Karen or Niels?
Hi all, I am Niels. I am the co-chair of the Human Rights Protocol Considerations Research Group, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Amsterdam, and also the most recent member to the Edu Directorate.
And I am Karen O'Donoghue. I'm co-chair of the NTP, TikTok, and SACM working groups in the IETF, and working with Miriam and Niels on the Edu team, a longtime attendee of the IETF.
All right, I've switched off my video because I thought that might be better for bandwidth. So you have to imagine me here, and I'll walk you through the slides. And you can also use the chat room for questions. And Karen or Niels will also use the chat room to post some of the links that we have on the slides into the room, because they're actually not clickable at the moment. So they just in case you were looking for the links later on, you can find them in the chat room. Right, let's get started. Well, this is the IETF Newcomers Webinar, so welcome to the IETF. Either we'll see you all next week in person, or maybe you're participating remotely. And we'll have information for both, like physical, face-to-face participants, but also remote participants in this presentations. There are a couple of sections throughout the presentation, and I will stop after each of the sections and see if there are any questions. But if you have any questions in between, if you can't understand or something is wrong, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. There's a little hand with an arrow on top next to your name, I think. Raise your hand, and then either Niels or Karen, they can let you speak. To start with, I want to show you the IETF Note well. That's like an important document that you will see a lot during the week in front of most of the working group sessions, other sessions. You don't have to read this here now. We just wanted to include this on the slide. There's actually a second slide with some more information. And that's very important information for every participant, because it kind of describes the copyright issues and patent issues and your rights and during the IETF and what you can expect in those terms from when you participate in the IETF. The first section I want to go through is a bit of an overview of how the IETF is structured. Wait a minute, where's my scope slide? There, I just skipped through it. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you the scope of this presentation is not to go into all the details about the IETF history and the structure and all the different organizations. It really is meant to tell you how to survive your first IETF meeting and how to get through the week. It can be very overwhelming at the beginning. There are thousands of people, or thousands, 1,500 people maybe at the meeting, lots of working groups, lots of different sessions. And so we just want to give you some practical information and how you can get through the week. And there's a lot of information on the there's more information about other aspects of the IETF on this link that you will see there. It's a YouTube channel where Scott Bradner, who was actually who used to be one of the used to give this newcomers tutorial in the past, and he has a lot of background information, and they're little modular YouTube videos that you can watch for all various aspects of the IETF history, finance, structure, and so forth. So yeah, the first section is the IETF kind of in a nutshell. And what is it? What does it do? What's its mission? Well, you can read the mission there is to make the internet work better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. And what that basically means is that all the protocols and the technology that's being developed, it needs to be secure, needs to scale, it needs to be deployable in an effective way, and all that is described in this RFC. So that's kind of the core of the IETF. And the IETF is a standards organization, obviously. It builds standards, it builds these protocols. And there are other standards organizations that you might be aware of, like the ITU or ETSI or W3C. It's slightly different than most of the other standards organizations, and it's that it, for instance, has no formal membership. So you participate as individual. All participants are individuals. Obviously, they also have most of them have either university or an employer behind them, but that doesn't really count that much in the development and the discussions of the protocols. There's no formal voting. There's something we call humming. We'll get back to that in the and when we talk about consensus building. That can be a little bit awkward the first time you'll get to a working group and people will sit there and go like, and then you will understand that this means that's a kind of to get a feel of the room, what the opinion is. And there's no formal involvement of governments in the IETF, and there's also no government approved standards process. So the standard is a standard basically when people use it, and when people start using the protocol, and when it's deployable, interoperable, and so forth. So it's pretty much market driven. It's not approved by any other body or government. It's focused on internet technologies, obviously, and it's, as I said, pretty unique and also bottom up in the way it's working. The IETF is structured around a number of areas. There are 7 areas at the moment, but they can change over time. Some areas have been merged over time, or new areas are developed as technology evolves as well. Each of these areas have 2 or 3 area directors that are responsible for that particular area and all the working groups in that area. I'm not going to read through all this. You'll see also then later on when you prepare for the meeting which working groups fall under what areas. You see also some like a general area, for instance, that's more concerned with more administrative and organizational aspects of the IETF. They're usually also handled in working groups or BOFs. We'll get to that. Actually, one word maybe on the Sunday for those of you who will go to London in person. We're also trying to organize every time before the IETF a tutorial about one of these areas. So this Sunday, there will be a tutorial about the transport area and what that entails and what the current hot issues are in the current working groups. If you're interested in that, that might be a good start of the week. And then next, as I mentioned earlier, the humming is part of the IETF consensus building process. So it's important to understand to understand the way this works at the IETF. So there's an IETF mantra that's been around from very early IETF meetings. One of the first an early participant, Dave Clark, said, "We reject kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code." And that's pretty much still how it works. I mean, there's no voting. It's important that standards are agreed upon by rough consensus, and that that they are workable and deployable, and that there's code that to implement them. And rough consensus is achieved. What does that mean? Rough consensus is not necessarily that everybody agrees, but then also all issues are addressed or are talked about and discussed, but not necessarily all issues can be solved all the time. So it's important that in the end, everybody kind of can live with a solution, and all issues are brought to the table, and discussed. But it's not like if somebody disagrees, then it's a no-go. So it's really almost a bit of a negotiation, and the humming is a way to kind of understand how people, are in the in the consensus process. You know, if they're humming louder, then they agree more. If they're humming less, then they don't like it. And so you'll get into that when you're in the room. And the session chair or the working group chair, they're responsible for determining if consensus has been reached. And it's also very important to note that most of the consensus is actually built on the mailing lists. Now, you can't hum on the mailing list, obviously, so people have to say if they agree with something or if they have an issue. And so the working group chairs or the session chairs will have to take both the physical meetings and also the mailing list discussions into account before they can declare consensus. And there's a really good RFC written by Pete Resnick about how this works and what this actually means and how to build consensus. And I think that also applies to, or can be applied to not only the IETF, but to other organizations as well. I recommend you to read this. It's not very long. It's quite an easy read. Let's move on. The humming and the consensus is obviously also part of an IETF culture. And there are other aspects to the IETF culture, for instance, that it's very informal. I mean, you'll see people, you know, they love wearing t-shirts. It's very informal. People like know each other for a long time. They're very close working relationships. Even though there's so many of them, thousands of people come together, and it's almost like, you know, they're always looking forward to see each other. And but obviously the work is also very important, not just the social aspect. And people are very kind of passionate about what they do, and they're smart. They can be vocal about what they, you know, the technology that they, you know, believe in or that they're passionate about. And technical excellence is obviously very highly valued. So you're encouraged to participate and to go to the mic and to speak up, but yeah, you listen to what people say first and then maybe decide how to react. I see that Niels and Karen are wonderfully adding stuff there in the chat room, so I don't have to worry about that. Next, just the last part of this section there's a bit of an alphabet soup, obviously, maybe like in most organizations, but this is quite specific. You'll hear a lot of acronyms during the week. And I made a little drawing there. It's not the ultimate kind of IETF diagram, but just to illustrate this, I hope you can read it. It's a little small, but we also make these slides available. You can look at them later. So the little green box there, you see all kinds of little working groups, and they're organized as in these areas that I mentioned earlier, the 7 areas. And as I said, also each area has a number of area directors, and these area directors again form the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group. And they are mostly responsible to move along the work of the working groups to see if the consensus has been reached, and kind of the technical management of the IETF activities in the whole standards process. As part of the IETF, there's also the RFC editor. That's basically the editor that's responsible for the document series, the RFC documents that are produced by all the working groups. And there are a number of kind of administrative bodies. They're there to organize the meeting, but also to look at the finances and kind of there's an oversight committee to look at the general structure. So the IETF Administrative Oversight Committee, there's the IETF Administrative Support Activity, the IETF Administrative Director, the IETF Trust. So that's all kind of more or less administrative and organizational, and you don't have to worry about that at this point. There's another important body, that's the Internet Architecture Board. It sits a little outside there because it's almost like another control instance, if you will, and they provide oversight about the technical internet architecture and the standards process. So they're not so necessarily involved in the nitty-gritty of the working groups. They kind of keep an overview. And then another organization that's kind of set up in parallel or next to the IETF is the Internet Research Task Force. And they have research groups instead of working groups. And you see that they're on the left-hand side, and Niels is going to tell you more about this later on. And then there's the IANA. I don't want to leave that out. I think we left them out on the left-hand side there. The Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, and they are responsible for assigning protocol numbers to the protocols that the IETF produces as one of their activities. Here on the next slide is just an overview of what I just said, basically. So you have an overview of who's doing what. And at this point, this is the end of the first section. So do you have any questions at this point about what I just described? Or any additions from Niels and Karen, maybe? I don't know if I forgot something. If not, I don't see any hands. Then we'll move on. So now you know a bit more about the background and how the IETF is set up and what the different components are. Now, let's see, you come to the IETF, either remotely or in person. So as I said, it can be quite overwhelming. There are 1,000 to like 1,500 people. They meet 3 times a year. It's pretty big, and you can easily get lost if you don't know, if you don't have a plan, or you just kind of think you're wandering in and you'll see how it goes. I really urge you to prepare a bit for what you actually want to do during the week. We'll get to that. There are about 130 working groups. They're not all meeting necessarily next week, but you'll see on the list, on the agenda, there's a lot of working group meetings. There are also meetings, they're called Birds of a Feather. That cost me years to understand what that actually means. And it basically means that it's people of the same interests, like of the same feather, the same kind of people, kind of birds, get together and talk about one specific technical topic that they're all interested in. And we have another slide on this in a bit more detail. There are also IRTF meetings. So the IRTF research groups, they also meet during the week, and there are about 7 or so different sessions next week. And there are also area-specific sessions. So the areas, the 7 areas I mentioned earlier, some of them have these area-wide overview sessions. They're quite good way to get into a specific area and see what they're currently working on. There's a plenary on Thursday, I believe. That's usually a good place to go to and get some reporting on what's currently going on, more administrative level, but also there's always an interesting technical presentation for the entire IETF. So it's a large room. And there are a number of small things earlier in the week, like hackathons, code sprints. There are tutorials. Oh, the plenary is on Wednesday, says Greg. Sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. And there are a bunch of tutorials on Sunday, and there are lunch sessions during the week. So that's all listed on the agenda. And this time there's also a social event on Tuesday evening, and I believe there's still tickets. There are other kind of side meetings. They're not necessarily organized directly by the IETF. Like obviously, during and between the sessions, there are lots of little hallway and break like meetings during the breaks and to discuss little things. They're kind of informal BOVs. They're called bar BOVs, but you don't have to meet in a bar. You just meet in the hallway, and it's kind of just a small group of people that come together and talk about a certain issue. There are editing sessions, and then there's also help with internet draft editing, because obviously that's one of the main outcomes of the IETF, are these documents. So all this is a lot of information, a lot of different sessions, a lot of different meetings. There's an app that I would like to encourage you to use and to see, maybe that helps you to keep track of the agenda. There's obviously also the agenda online. It's also linked from the main meeting site, I believe. So if you don't remember that link, but oh yeah, Karen already posted it there. Is there any questions at this point? Don't hesitate, raise your hand. I think we have plenty of time for questions. If not, I'll move on to kind of the meat of the meeting. I mean, other working groups. Obviously, that's where most of the IETF work takes place. And as mentioned earlier, each working group has a mailing list, and most discussions and most work is done on these mailing lists. So these face-to-face meetings are mostly focused on specific issues in like current documents that are being discussed. So it's really important that you prepare and look at the agenda of these working groups and hopefully have time to read some of the documents that will be discussed during the meeting, because otherwise it's easy to get lost, and it's not like there won't be a lot of introduction, and people dive right into the current issues and the current documents that are on the agenda. They have deadlines to meet, milestones to reach, so it's a proper working session. It's not like a conference. All the sessions are streamed and recorded, and also on the working group pages, as I mentioned, there are milestones and there are charters and goals listed, and they're all negotiated or agreed with the specific area, with the area directors of that specific working group in that area the working group lives in. So you can see on the picture is actually a good example of a working group. There's a remote participant on the screen. There is a line of people behind the mic, lots of people in the room, and a presentation slide there on the screen. So lately there are a lot of remote presentations also during the IETF, and it seems to work quite well. And the other sessions you will see on the agenda, they're these so-called birds of a feather session or BOF session, and they're often that's usually how working groups are formed. So people get together, they have a certain interest, they want to solve something, they set up a BOF. Maybe it's even a little mini bar BOF first, but then they have an official BOF on the agenda. Maybe even two, if it's not enough. And then during these BOF sessions, they discuss the scope of the particular work that they want to do, see if there's enough consensus in the room. People agree that this is an interesting topic to work on. And then, of course, the area directors are also in the room, and they will then discuss later if this is a good topic to form a working group on, or if maybe more preparation work is needed. Some of the BOFs are not set up to form a working group. So you will see sometimes on the agenda it says non-working group forming BOF, I believe it says. And they're often sessions where like maybe administrative or organizational IETF specific items are discussed, and they're not necessarily there's no long-term working group needed for this. And at the welcome reception and on Sunday, I believe that all the BOFs have a little poster. At least that was the case in the past. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, that's me. Exactly. That's me presenting a BOF a few IETFs ago. We had a BOF about the educational team. And so we get a poster, and during the welcome reception, you get to see all the BOF and the BOF chairs, and you get an idea of what's happening during the week. Right, I think I want to hand over to Niels now.
I will, Miriam. So thanks so much for giving the introduction and all this stuff. You already start to feel the feeling that you all are going to get next week. And that is in a bit of a vertigo, because there are going to be, as Miriam said, many participants, but also extremely detailed discussion of very specific drafts. And it seems like everyone will know each other. So if you'll feel lost, that's probably the right feeling that you'll have at the IETF. Many of us have that feeling at some time of the week. But that also helps you to reorient and come up with new solutions. So that's great. And if you want to come up with new solutions that are not specifically built towards a very specific standards, the Internet Research Task Force is the place to be. Because that's where we do not work towards very specific standards, but try to see if we can develop more long-term topics. So, for instance, the research group I'm co-chairing is focusing on the relationship between human rights and internet protocols, but we also have a new research group on distributed architectures. There's also the Crypto Forum that's looking at the most recent developments in the field of cryptography. And sometimes specific work of these research group spins off into the IETF to be specifically standardized. And if you want to know more about the IRTF, there's RFC 7418. And probably you've already all appreciated that both the output of the work of the IETF as well as the description of the IETF itself is captured in RFCs. Can you give me the next slide, Miriam? So to give a bit of an overview outside of your specific area of expertise, you can go into area sessions, such as the SAC, which is the overview session for the security area, or the internet area. So every area has a general session which are a bit less specific than the specific working group. In the plenaries, there is, which is often part of two parts, then an administrative plenary, where you get updated on the administrative issues in the IETF and when you can ask questions to the leadership. There's often also a technical plenary with technical talks, and of course the lunch talks on emerging topics. Next slide, please, Miriam. And if you aren't planning so already, the hackathon is one of the fastest growing new areas of the IETF, which takes place on Saturday and Sunday, where we actually work on running code and implementing solutions. And the hackathon has been generating so much new work that we now also have the hackathon room open for the rest of the week, so that people can continue working on specific code projects, even though the hackathon will be over. There's also code sprints where people work on IETF specific tools, because the IETF, of course, builds its own tools. And in the code lounge, it is the space of the hackathon when the hackathon is over, so you can spend the rest of the week coding. There are several places with tables where you can work during the week. So do not feel obliged to go to a session every time there is a session. But you can also just sit in a room and read and study drafts, or maybe even already respond to discussions that have been taken from the session onto the mailing list, and make use of having the people and the attention together, because sometimes then you can resolve conflicts rather quickly. Next slide, please. Part of the advantages of being together at the IETF and not working on mailing lists is actually the networking and the social events. And there are social events such as the social itself on Tuesday, but there are also important meetings such as the Sisters Lunch, which is for people of the non-male gender. They have a sisters group and a mailing list, and they always have a lunch. Miriam or Karen, on which day is that? So that is a great place to meet people, but also to ask questions.
Thursday, right?
There will be the IETF
yes,
will probably be one of the places that is most dense in experts on specific protocols. Probably the people who thought of the protocol or doing the main work on pushing it forward are here. So ask them questions, and most of the time they will be very willing to tell you more about it, or tell you where you can find the information that you need, or whether an idea for an adaptation that you might have might not be working, and that will save you then a whole lot of time. Next slide, please. So for you, the newcomers, there are a lot of activities. There is the newcomers tutorial on Sunday, but that will cover pretty much the same topics as you've had here, but feel free to pop in. There are the IETF quick connections, which allows you to have short one-on-one conversations with experienced IETFers. So you can get some familiar faces who you can greet in the hallway, so you'll feel less lost, but they can also point you to people in your expertise field and might really get you, help you hit the ground running. There is the newcomers meet and greet directly after the quick connection session, where you see where the newcomers will be, and working group chairs, area directors, and the Internet Architecture Boards, in short, the IETF leadership. It is a quite loud place because it's the first time many of these people see each other in 3 months. But it's also a great place to ask for, do you know this expert on WebRTC? and then you will be pointed from one person to the other, and within no time you'll know all the relevant people that are working on this technology, to which you can ask your questions, or maybe set an appointment to discuss some stuff later in the week. You can also sign up for mentoring, where people have a bit longer discussions. Some of you might actually already have a mentor. You could have signed up for that in the registration form, where you have the opportunity to meet a mentor beforehand and during the week with all the questions. There is the newcomers dinner Monday evening, where we will just have an informal dinner and the ability just to chat among each other and share experience. And of course, Karen, Miriam, and I are available here for your questions, but we will also be there all week, and you can reach out to us directly in person or via email with your questions, and we can try to help you as well as we can. Next slide, please. So to ensure that you will not feel that you're missing a beat, just a repetition of most general meeting etiquette. So try to read the drafts that you want to discuss before the working group sessions. Because if you are trying to understand the discussion while in the working group, you're always going to be too late. And you'll probably not have the opportunity to form a well-informed decision on a hum or to ask a question at the mic. So it's better to go to less sessions and read more than just attend every session, because most of the time you'll be lost. What is highly encouraged is talk to people, ask their opinions, see what they think, see what they understand. Enjoy yourself. It is a great opportunity to be among this great community of people in one of the great cities of the world. So ensure also to have a good time. And to have a good time, you need food and sleep. So think of that. So do not overdo coffee and screen time, but try to find some sleep so that you don't get overwhelmed, because a week can be a really long and intense time, especially if you're also going to the hackathon. Then you have 2 days of hacking, 5 days of meeting, quite intense, plus a lot of nice lunches and dinners. So try to save yourself so that you can also enjoy the week more and probably learn more. To ensure that the IETF is a welcoming and environment in which everyone can learn, please be excellent and very tolerant toward other participants, because only then we can build a real, true, inclusive global internet and benefit from everyone's thoughts and contributions. Next slide, please, Maria. So when you are in the session, go into the mic, and you will often hear people saying, eat the mic. So speak really closely into the mic, not just for the people in the room, but also so that remote participants can hear you really well, and that people who listen the session back can also hear your comments. So to also improve the comments and the understanding, say your name every time you speak at the microphone. Simply every time. It's a rule, everyone does it, also do it. When you are in the room, you will get a board coming by with blue sheets that provide a record of who is in the room. That will help us understand how many people there are in the room. So if the session of the working group might need a bigger or a smaller room next time. And it's also for intellectual property issues and trademark issues, as noted in the note that was discussed earlier by Miriam. Sometimes it can be tempting to just do email, but try to benefit from the situation and really listen to the discussion. And all your technical comments and questions are very welcome. Even though if this is one of your first meetings, it might be very intimidating to step up at the mic and get into a hefty discussion, because one has to say the discussions can be intense. Then a good way to feel the room or ask a question can also be using the Jabber channel. So simply using XMPP every session has a Jabber channel and has a Jabber scribe who can also read out the question to the microphone, but not necessarily. So you can have back questions and see if it makes sense and see if it reverberates some interest in the room, and then you can always choose to go to the mic. So often the Jabber channel is a very good place to see if there is more interest in the question or the point you would about to be arguing. Next slide, please. Oh, and the Jabber channels you can find in the agenda. So try to ensure that it gets that you get it set up. Again, if you have problems setting it up, there are always people ready to help you with that.
Are there any questions at this point? Oops, I'm sorry, I'm moving around. About what Niels has just described, because that's like an important part, the whole how to survive the working groups. Yes, there's a question. Let's see how I get you in there.
I think I put him in, so don't.
You have to click this button, I think.
You're able to hear me? Hi. Okay. Yeah. Hi. Where can I find this presentation link? Is this circulated?
So earlier, I'll put it in again, but the presentation link is not currently online, but it is going to be linked from the newcomers page, and I'll put that link in a second again.
Okay.
We didn't put it on in advance, so my apologies.
You go ahead, Miriam, because I feel I start rambling.
Okay.
I start rambling.
Shall I take it back, Niels, or do you want to continue? All right, all right. Okay, let's do this. The last section of this presentation is basically some additional resources and also showing you some people and who's involved in the IETF organization and some useful tools that you can use during the week. So there's some key people that are behind the IETF organization, and I show some of them are listed on the overview slide earlier on. And unfortunately, we don't have any up-to-date pictures right now because things have changed a little bit. We'll add them later. There's the IETF Secretariat, and you will meet most of them when you register. When you come to London in person, you register at the desk there. Friendly staff behind the desk there to give you your badges, and you can ask them about anything, about the IETF and where the rooms are, and any questions or complaints or issues you have, you can ask them. There is also the RFC editor that I mentioned earlier. They have a desk also in the main hall there. If you have any questions about certain documents or the process and how to develop an RFC. The IANA, the Assigned Numbers Authority staff, they will also have a desk to explain everything about the protocol numbers and how all this works, or if there are any questions about that. And there's also an internet administrative director that's kind of arranging all the bits and pieces of the IETF meeting. An important team here, we have some pictures also on the slide, is the Ombuds team. As Niels mentioned earlier, it's important that you treat each other respectfully. But if you experience anything weird, anything you don't like yourself, or if you witness another kind of inappropriate behavior in the hallways and the rooms, please do not hesitate to contact these people. I mean, there's a link there, and they're running around all week. And during the meetings, you will see them. The Alison Mencken on the left, she's also at the same time the chair of the Internet Research Task Force. So you will see her a lot in the research group meetings, in the open IRTF meetings. And the other two individuals, they're also very well versed IETF participants. So please don't hesitate to report anything you find fishy. And to recognize some other groups in the meetings, there's the badges can be quite colorful. Some people have lots of little buttons and ribbons, dots on their badges. I won't go through all the colors here. You'll see that when you get there, but you can then refer back to the slide maybe. And the newcomers, as a newcomers, you'll have a ribbon so that you that people can also, if you're wandering around, feel lost, then people can come talk to you. And there also the working groups will have a ribbon now where the working group chairs will have a ribbon where their working group will be listed. So that can be quite useful to find the specific working group chairs of your interest. Here's some more links that you will then find on the slides, and the tutorials I mentioned, and I find them also on the website. The tutorials I mentioned earlier, Sunday afternoon tutorials, is not only the newcomers tutorial, but also 3 other interesting tutorials of an hour each that you might find interesting. There's the meeting wiki that has some interesting kind of logistical information on it, and there is a link to various IETF mailing lists. And I believe you all subscribe to the IETF Newcomers mailing list, and possibly also to the 101 meeting attendee mailing list, which can be a little noisy, so you'll have to see what you can pick out there for your interests. There's, I just mentioned that, the newcomers mailing list that can be quite useful. So the Secretariat will send a lot of information there that could be handy for you as newcomers. There's also a companion program if you find that interesting, to bring a friend. And there's a lot of tools. So there's also the data tracker mentioned earlier. And so there's a main IETF website that you probably have seen now. But there's also the data tracker that has a lot of information about each and every working group, their milestones, their goals, their current documents, the meeting times, the mailing list archives, and so forth. And there's another URL, it's the tools.ietf pages that have a lot of tools that's actually, they are developed by the IETF to help with the whole workings of the IETF process. And thanks Karen for putting all these links in the chat room. That's very handy. And at the end, I wanted to show you actually this picture is an older picture, but the people on the team there on the picture, they are the team that have developed this interface that you're currently using, the MeetEcho interface. And if you participate remotely, you will use that same interface, so you have a bit of an experience now. And you can also use it when you're there, for Jabber or whatever. But then these people here, these friendly people, have made all this possible. And there's a link to remote participation. As I said earlier, this seems to be working quite well for the last few years already. Last but not least, obviously there is a network at the IETF that you can use. It starts usually on Saturday and is up and running all through the week until Friday. There's network operations team somewhere hidden in the hotel, and they're responsible for all this in the background. And it's not trivial. It's quite a challenge to run this network for very demanding IETF crowd during the whole week. And so be patient. If something goes wrong, they're probably already on it. But also please don't hesitate to report something that you think doesn't work, or you go to the terminal room. You can ask people there for help. There are no terminals in the terminal room. We just kind of call it this now for historical reasons. But there are printers and also people and that you can ask for advice. And there is a lot of information, I think, about the SSID and the user ID and everything on when you get to the meeting. The last slide here about the Jabber room. So the chat rooms, as Niels mentioned, every working group, every other session has chat rooms, and they're all, these Jabber rooms are all linked also from the agenda. So you can click on that there. And finally, above all, enjoy the meeting. As said earlier, don't overcommit and try not to reach to attend every single session and fill up the entire agenda, because you'll be very tired at the end of the week. So try to give yourself space.
We will not
and,
stop until we have
people,
3 questions.
meet people there and talk to each other. And yeah,
I don't. Have we already mentioned the newcomers evaluation on Thursday?
Use to give us feedback if you have questions or feedback about this this webinar, and you know how we can improve it in the future.
Because for us it is also really important to get new people into the IETF, so you are very important to us. So we also would like to understand how we can help you better. So, and later during the week, you will probably have an idea of like, wow, I wish they had done that for me, or I wish I had known that before. So please let us know so we can do it better for in the future. Or maybe you even want to join the team and help us work with newcomers. So you can always talk with us about that. And Thursday morning, I think at 8:30, we have a feedback session. Am I correct, Karen? Yeah, I think it's Thursday morning, 8:30. You'll get an email about that. And as Miriam said, 101 attendees is quite noisy, and it will remain a quite noisy email list during the week. But sometimes there's also relevant information on there. So perhaps, as you probably already know, like list filtering is your friend, so that you do not get all lists from a working group or a specific list.
But I think you're right.
Jammed in your inbox, but so see that you can thread them so you can read them separately, and then they might not overflow your mailbox and worsen your experience. Yes, a question.
Thanks, Toby. I just posted the newcomers feedback session in the chat room. So yes, it's 8:30 on Thursday. And one other,
I think during registration time, you could opt out of being mentioned on the list. But generally, it is useful and interesting to have a look.
Oh, there's a question.
There is also a very interesting page while you are having a look, and that is the page made by Jari Arko, which gives you information on
to the IETF 101 meeting in London. There is a link to the attendees list.
Okay, I won't say anything then. I'll look up the link and then post it. It will be more relevant than me.
See who's there. Yeah. You're breaking up there, Niels. I don't know if it's just me, but yeah, I didn't hear any of what you just said. Try again. Okay, thanks. Okay, yeah, you were breaking up. You were breaking up in the very beginning, but then it worked fine until just now. So I don't know what's going on there. Any more questions? I hope you are looking forward to come either to London or participate remotely. And I hope we didn't scare you. Well, if there are no questions, maybe we have 10 minutes left, but we're also happy to close. Okay, well, thank you all for participating and for listening. And please fill in the survey. I'll put the link up here once more, that you, so that we can improve in the future. Yes.
It was great to have you all, and please fill out the survey, and looking forward to see you all in London or remotely. And as said, never hesitate to ask anything on the mailing list or directly to us.
Okay. Okay, bye all.
Bye all.